You listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Damn Podcast. I am your host, Angie Machado, publisher of Beaver Blitz, joined as always with Jake Hedberg, our beat writer. We're taping this July 11th, 2023, kind of the dog days of summer. Jake, first of all, why don't you just say hi and tell us what you've been up to this summer?
Yeah, so far this summer, I've just been working, counting down the days. I head back down to Corvallis 3 weeks from today, actually, and fall camp starts on August 3rd. So I'm super excited to get that rolling.
Yes, fall camp. It'll be your first one. You excited?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm super stoked. Can't wait.
Fall camp is seriously, I know you guys have heard me say it, it's my favorite time of the year. The warm mornings down in Corvallis, sunshine, there's so much anticipation. Not that anybody cares, but I just got back from vacation. So now I'm back like full time. I don't leave again until right before Labor Day when I take my oldest to college. So that's going to be a rough go, but kind of going forward, right before fall camp. So in 2 weeks, we are going to do kind of another position preview, real kind of the giant preview of fall camp. And then you guys are going to start seeing Jake and I weekly throughout the season. So we're going to go weekly all through August and then also through football season. So exciting times. Before I lose people here, I do want to let you know, I am still working on getting this on Spotify since I was out of the country for a couple weeks. I didn't, and then our 24/7 guy who handles it is on paternity leave. Couple little scheduling quirks right now. I'm working on getting us back on Spotify for those that listen to podcast only. It is coming, I promise, as is a new intro featuring Jake and not Carter. Certain things, housekeeping stuff, but that is what we're doing. But Jake, it has been a super, super busy June, kind of the end of the season with baseball wrapping up, but then really just hitting the ground running in June with recruiting. You have been following it. You've been talking to all the official visitors that have come through Corvallis. What is the one thing or two things that has really stood out to you as far as what those players are saying about their visits?
Yeah, really the one thing that is pretty consistent, or there's two things. The first thing that all players typically say is how much they love Jonathan Smith's staff. I think every single player I've talked to, and there's been a lot of them, have said that the coaching staff has just been fantastic. They love them. They love the way they coach the players, the way they treat the players, which really stands out. And the second thing is just Corvallis, really. Corvallis is a smaller college town, and certain athletes can get pushed away, can be pushed away from that. But the majority of the kids that I've talked to have really been talking about Corvallis and just how great a town it is.
Yeah, and that's been universal, even if these young men don't choose Oregon State.
Yeah.
And there's been some big official visitors coming through. Let's talk a little bit about the commitments we've seen, because what do we have? 7? 10, well, yep. 10, but we've had
7 in the last
month, 6 weeks. So let's just run down the list. I have a list for us and talk about, and this is in order based on when they committed. So we're going to start with the highest rated recruit to actually of the past 6 weeks. And he is just narrowly missed out by Logan Saldate, who committed right at the end of May. But let's talk Malaki Durant, wide receiver out of Graham, Washington. Tell me a little bit about him.
Yeah, so Durant's a taller, bigger body guy. He's 6'2", 160 pounds. It was a tougher recruitment to win. Committed to us over Oregon, Washington, a few other Pac-12 programs. I really like the size Durant brings and the physicality. Plays 7-on-7 for Team FSP, which is Tracy Ford Sports Performance. And Tracy Ford runs a great program up there. Really excited about Durant. I think Durant could be a guy that comes in and contributes as a freshman just based off his size and strength. for the receiver room.
Yeah, tall. And I know that a lot of Beaver fans out there are going to be excited to hear someone that's maybe not 5'6", 5'7". So bigger body guy. The next commit the Beavs got was an offensive lineman, again from the state of Washington. Oregon State really going up north and taking some guys right from their backyard and from Washington's backyard. Dylan Sikorsky, ranked as an 86. Tell me a little bit about him.
Yeah, so I actually saw Sikorsky at the Elite 11 regional down in Eugene, and he is a massive man. I mean, a 17-year-old kid that's 6'5", pushing 310 pounds. He's a big guy. Not super highly recruited. I believe Oregon State was his only Power 5 offer, but I believe we offered him back in like September of last year. So we were really in on him early. He has a great relationship with Coach M and Coach Smith, and any offensive lineman that Coach M wants, I want. So I think it was a solid pickup.
Yeah, and you say that, but it's so true. I think out of anyone in this staff, I think the guys that Coach Mahalichek goes after are really, he knows what he wants. I mean, I look at Josh Gray, for example. I mean, that was a kid that, I know some schools came in on him late, including Oregon, and tried to sway him, but Oregon State was in on him, and they knew what they wanted there. Now here we're going to go to Tampa, Florida. That connection to Florida continues, especially with Coach Blue. And this is a young man, Andrew Brinson, who you've actually had a pretty good relationship with, a guy that's been committed quietly for quite some time.
Yeah. So Brinson has been committed actually since February, just didn't announce till June, and he's been a great kid to talk to. Super nice, super respectful, really good athlete too. He was being recruited by lots of programs as a receiver, but he's coming to Oregon State as a corner. Wisconsin, Central Florida, NC State, and Purdue were some of the programs that were pursuing him. And I think it's a big get for Oregon State to get guys over teams that are top 25 caliber. And I think it's just a testament to the job that Jonathan Smith's done.
Especially coming clear across the country. I mean, this isn't a kid coming from Washington State that kind of knows the area. Another young man that we've talked to, both of us have talked to quite a bit over the past, probably 5-6 months.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people liked him as a wide receiver. Oregon State is recruiting him as a defensive back, and that's Exodus Ayers. May have the name. I think he gets the name award this year. But
I agree.
Another, originally from New Mexico, by way now of a prep school in New Hampshire. Talk about why you're excited about him, because I think he can add a lot of versatility here.
Yeah, personally, this is my favorite commitment out of the 7 guys. I love his film. 6'3", 175 corner, had, I believe, 12 interceptions a season ago, which is just astounding numbers. I think he's a guy who will come in physical and ready to play immediately. Not sure he necessarily will, just due to the fact that Oregon State's got some guys at that spot. But this was a huge commitment. Boston College was a program really pushing for him, but I think Exodus is going to be a stud. Really excited about him.
Yeah. Now, as we're getting into July, I think this next commitment actually happened July 4th.
Yep. Week ago.
A week ago today. Offensive tackle David Abajian. I hope I'm saying his name right. And I do correct. Ron pointed out that Durant is actually Malachi, and I pronounced it wrong, so I apologize. But David Abajian, offensive tackle out of West Hills, California. He's actually he's made a couple trips like pretty recently, and you actually ran into him on campus.
Yeah. So I saw him on campus during like a business group presentation a few weeks ago, which is pretty cool. I love this get. I think he's the best offensive lineman Oregon State's got so far. Solid offer list: Nebraska, Cal, Arizona State, Kansas. Really good get, and I think he's going to be a guy that Coach M turns into a starting caliber player.
Yeah. Then they turned right after the 4th of July ran. And this one, I'm excited about this one because I think it's great to keep that pipeline to Hawaii open. And Punahou is one of the top programs in the state, and it's a position of need. Edge rush, Kekai Burnett. Yeah.
I think this was yet again another huge win. Cal and Washington State were really pushing hard. I I believe Kike is coming to Oregon State as a defensive lineman. They are wanting Kike to bulk up and play there instead of an outside backer spot. And I think he's a guy that could really break out with a solid senior season. You know, he did a really good job at the Under Armour ESPN 300 camp last weekend or 2 weekends ago. And I think Oregon State got a steal here.
Do you see him kind of in a Lolo Hea role?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the coaching staff wants him to push up to 260, 270. I think he's at like 230 right now. So a redshirt year, a year in the weight room, and I could see him taking over that spot for sure.
And then last but not least, and this is another one that you and I have both spoken with several times, just happened Saturday, and I did watch his Instagram. Did you watch his Instagram? And he committed to University of Oregon. My kids are in the backseat, like freaking out, but he had all the Beaver gear. So running back Brandon Tolis gives Oregon State their second running back commit for 2024 out of the state of Texas. What do you think of Brandon?
Yeah, great kid. I mean, he's a great kid to talk to. This is a guy the coaching staff identified early, and they wanted him. Didn't have the best production, but I think he's a guy that could blow up, have a really good senior season. He was another guy with multiple Power 5 offers, big conference teams pushing for him, and he committed to Oregon State even though we already had a running back. So I think we have two solid backs, and Texas backs have been kind to Oregon State with Jaquiz Rogers, Storm Woods, Dame. Who knows? Yeah,
it's exciting, and I think you brought up a really good point that I wanted to touch on with recruiting, because I know it's been talked about in the lodge a lot. Tolis, for example, didn't have huge numbers, but this is an A-list guy. And if you guys have been around Beaver Blitz for a while, you know I talk about A-list recruits and kind of who's the B-list. And these guys are all A-list guys that were identified a long time ago.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, right? I mean, the coaching staff saw something. These are the guys they went after. Another thing I've noticed this year, coming off a 10-win season, Oregon State is really trying to push and make a play for some of the more highly rated or highly recruited players. When that happens, and we've had a lot of discussions about Oregon State missing out on quarterbacks that they've committed or recruited. But when you're going after the guys that everybody's going after, it's going to make it tougher. And Oregon State's going to be in a dogfight for some of these guys. I know I would rather have it that way than kind of going after low-hanging fruit. So Oregon State is definitely trying to elevate the recruiting. And what do you think, overall thoughts about where they stand right now with the 10 guys they do have committed?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty solid class so far. I mean, they're a little heavy on offense, which means I would think the rest of this class, or I feel like there's guys on the defense that they're still pushing for predominantly. There's still a quarterback that they need to pick up, which is kind of a question mark right now just because I'm not sure anyone wants to come sit for 3 years. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the class shakes up.
Yeah, so right now we are sitting at 2 running backs, 2 offensive linemen, 7 overall offensive commits, 3 defensive commits. The class is ranked 63rd nationally, which isn't too far off kind of where they finished. Oregon State's kind of in that, high 40s, low or mid 50s. You mentioned quarterback. Yes, Oregon State has had a couple swings and misses here with quarterbacks going elsewhere. I agree. I think there's maybe a concern with some of these younger guys coming in and seeing how good Aiden Childs looks. However, any place these young men choose, there's going to be competition. So I actually expect Oregon State to stay after these guys. EJ Kamenong, Demarcus Davis. These guys are going to still get some attention from Oregon State. They're not done recruiting them yet. So keep an eye on those guys. And then I think the Beavs will start watching some more film kind of as the senior season goes on with some. But remember, I know a lot of people were wringing their hands last year in the lodge when Dorman, 4-star kid, committed to Arizona. Oregon State goes after a young man by the name of Aiden Childs, who at the time was a pretty low 3-star. Yeah. And people were a little bit in panic mode right there. So just remember, got a whole senior season, and it will work out. And we'll get to Aiden Childs here in a little bit because I know there's a lot of questions about him. Changing gears a little bit because I want to talk about some of the late additions to 2023 that have already arrived on campus. And kind of just remind folks, because I think there's some guys. In fact, I had to add one that I forgot after I sent you this. I had two guys. I had
Yeah.
almost a third. So let's talk. These were all trained, and actually a new walk-on came on that we can talk about a little bit too. But
Yeah.
these guys are in this is actually you added two because I just see another one that you added. So a couple wide receivers, Jemai East and Jalen Holmes, linebacker Calvin Hart, and defensive back Drake Vickers. All are on the roster, have all transferred. What are your thoughts? Who do you see out of that group that maybe is making a play here come August?
Yeah, I think Calvin Hart and Jemiah East are both two of the guys that are more likely to see consistent action. Jemiah is the biggest receiver in that room. I also really liked his film. College of San Mateo has been really kind to Oregon State, and I think with Jemiah, there could be another guy that steps up and contributes immediately. 6'2", 215-pound kid. I could definitely see him in a. I think I'll see him in the second string group. And then Calvin Hart's a guy that has proven at the Power 5 level he could push for the second starting spot at backer, and if he doesn't start, I think he'll be in the rotation at the very least.
Yeah, he came from Illinois, correct?
Mm-hmm. First NC State, then Illinois.
Okay, so a couple transfers there, but a chance for him to really, Oregon State really needs someone to step up and help Easton Mascarenas on the other side. So definitely one to watch there. Which position groups, when we hit fall camp, this is going to be kind of a 10,000 foot level, because in 2 weeks we're going to really dive into these groups.
Mm-hmm.
But what position groups do you think will look the most different this August compared to last December when we left Las Vegas?
Well, the first one that comes to mind is obviously quarterback. DJ and Childs are two guys that really just transform a room from mediocre to a room that has the potential to be arguably the second best in the conference. I think that'll be real interesting to see how it plays out. Defensive back's another one. I mean, Jaden Grant's gone, Alex Austin's gone, Rajon Wright's gone, Skylar Thomas is now gone the rest of the season. So I feel like that's a spot where three new starters are going to have to step up, and you'll see lots of new faces or now like familiar names and bigger roles. And then I think receivers also another spot with Trayshawn's graduation, Tyjon's graduation, John Dunmore's transferred out. So outside of Anthony Gould, Silas Bolden, Josiah, there's guys that'll be stepping up that you haven't really seen as much or heard as much of.
But exciting. I mean, I'm with you. I think DBs is the one that I have maybe the most questions heading into.
Yeah.
But I also, I'm really excited to see Jaden Robinson, for example, and see what he does, just because he was so poised before he had that shoulder injury. And then the last couple games of the season, he really graded out pretty high.
He
also,
did great.
Seeing Alton Julian hopefully back in the mix at safety. Another guy who was right there in the, making huge plays before that knee injury and then kind of the setback with the knee injury. So some excitement there. Taking that excitement out of the next step, let's take a peek. Just kind of another. Somebody asked if I was in a she cave. No, this is a sweet little background, Roger, that I found, because I didn't think you guys wanted to see my ugly essential oil. My office is going to go through an overhaul at some point. That's the plan. Okay, so let's look at this. A way too early look at our schedule, at the schedule coming forward. Oregon State starts on the road this year against a pretty. I don't want to think anybody think that they're easy here. San Jose State. Mm-hmm. Fun game just because of all the Beaver ties there.
Yeah.
Brent Brennan obviously is the head coach. Kevin McGiven is there.
Jim Sayamalu.
Sayamalu is there. I mean, they have a lot of connections to Oregon State. To the fact that I've kept in touch with a lot of those guys and their wives, and it's fun to kind of touch base, and they'll always tell me they're watching Oregon State and cheering. So that'll be a fun game. On the road, though, to open the season before coming home to two games at home in the newly reopened Reser with UC Davis, San Diego State. Walk me through your thoughts on this preseason schedule.
Yeah, I actually think San Jose State's probably the toughest out of these three. I know a lot of people think that based off prior years, San Diego State will be the toughest, but I could see the San Jose State passing attack causing some trouble for a relatively inexperienced Oregon State secondary. Their quarterback, Chevin Cordillero. He was at Hawaii for 3 years, went to San Jose State last year, and he had a solid year. They like to throw the ball around. I think they have a really solid offense. I do think Oregon State will win just because their offense and defense should be enough to overcome that pass attack. UC Davis, I think fans should be excited about that game due to the high likelihood of seeing a certain freshman quarterback get some reps. And then San Diego State's a solid program. Brady Hoke is a great coach. I think that game will be interesting just because it's a more physical game. Oregon State's first 2 games will be more like not higher level players, whereas San Diego State's a darn good group of 5 team that could very well be a Power 5 program. So I think that could be a very interesting game to watch.
So after that, 2 home games, Oregon State hits the road, head to the Palouse. And I am thankful that Oregon State plays them in September and not November. I really don't know what to expect from the Cougs this year. What are your thoughts on the Cougs just early as you've kind of started diving into looking at these teams?
Yeah, I think they'll be a bowl team. I think they'll be 6-6 to 8-4. Solid team. Cam Ward's back. He's a pretty decent quarterback. Their receiver room's completely rehauled. They have 3 new receivers. Most of them are Mountain West transfers, I believe. Kyle Williams is one from UNLV. I think this is a trap game, to be honest. I think this is a game where Oregon State could be caught peeking ahead to the next Friday game against Utah. So I could see this game being dangerous, to be honest.
And you mentioned that. So the next week, this game I have circled because I think this game is going to be electric. Friday night game, students back in. Is this the Friday before school starts? Or is this the first Friday of classes?
School starts.
Okay.
First Friday of classes.
Students are going to be rowdy. Fans are going to be jacked for this one. Utah comes to town. Always a super physical game. I know a lot of people aren't talking Utah kind of at the top, but I just think Kyle Whittingham's teams are always tough. They're physical and very well coached. So I think win this game, and Oregon State catapults itself to some really pretty good conversations. Lose this game, it's a little bit of a toe stub. What are your thoughts about Utah coming to Corvallis?
Yeah, well, the students are already ready. They cannot wait. This game, I think, is going to have the best atmosphere of any home game this year. It's going to be a Friday night primetime game on Fox Sports 1. Students are going to be electric, tailgating all day. I'm super excited. I think this is going to be the game that makes or breaks this Oregon State season. A win will catapult them, which is exactly what you said. I think it could push them into a top 10, top 5 type team. Whereas a loss might be a little disappointing, but I still think with the loss they could compete for a 10-win year.
Okay. See, we're gonna have some fun here as we get down here. So, so after Utah, it's Cal on the road. Cal's just struggling. That's always, road games are always tough, right? I mean, anytime you're on the road in the Pac-12, it's never an easy game. But I like that Oregon State's at Cal. Next week, home versus UCLA, which is what are your thoughts on UCLA? Because that was another one. As I did the Pac-12 media poll, I was really I didn't really know where to put them.
I think it's a team that could finish as high as 2 or 3 in the conference, or could also finish as low as 7 or 8. This team for me is kind of the hardest to get a feel of. I think a lot of it comes down to the quarterback position. Dante Moore is obviously a highly ranked kid. Flipped to UCLA from U of O late in the process. He's competing with Colin Schkeely, who's a Kent State transfer, and Ethan Garbers, who is another pretty highly ranked kid. I think if Moore wins that job and is able to live up to that 5-star ranking as a freshman, then they could really surprise.
My feeling is since Chip left Oregon, I just haven't felt that he has gotten everything out of his players.
I kind of feel like teams have kind of caught up to that system now that it's more widespread and run throughout the country.
So Oregon State gets their bye. Good place for a bye. What do you think? Kind of, I mean, right
Yeah.
there, kind of middle of the season.
6 games in. I think it's
6
perfect.
games
There's
in.
7 games, excuse me.
7 games, yeah. And then they go on the road to Arizona. I actually just booked my tickets to this one. I'm heading down to
that'll be a
Tucson for
fun
this
one.
game. This one could be tough too. Maybe not as tough as Utah, but a road game at Arizona. What are your thoughts on that one?
I think Arizona could be a surprise program this year. I mean, their offense and their skill spots are absolutely dynamic. Jaden Delore has given Oregon State some trouble in the past at Washington State. He's 2-0 against us. They have 2 really good receivers, Jacob Cowing and I believe it's Teatora McMillan. Not sure how you say it.
Yeah.
But they have arguably the best receiving duo in the Pac-12 outside of Washington. And I think they could be in for a real breakout year.
Coached by, just so you guys know, former
Fish.
Oregon State wide receiver Kevin Cummings. He's in charge of the receivers down there. So that we're heading to that one on the road. Then the Beavs immediately turn around and go on the road to Colorado. And while Coach Prime, I think, is going to do some things there, I don't see this one as too dangerous. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not really buying the whole Coach Prime hype. I think this Colorado program will struggle year one just due to their really lack of depth. I mean, they've got guys, Travis Hunter, Cormani McClain, that are guys that'll be able to compete. But I think this Colorado team will struggle. I have them at the bottom of the Pac-12 with Stanford. I think Dion could get it done, but for people to come saying they'll be out there competing for a Rose Bowl spot in year one is a little too much, I believe.
Yeah. The only issue I see with Colorado at Colorado, which it's a fun game too. If you guys have never been to Boulder, it's a fun one. But it's just the altitude, and it does mess with you a little bit. So it's I don't think it's Denver high. I don't think it's mile high, but it's not too far.
It's still up there.
Yeah, it's still up there. So kind of a nice little break there. After Arizona, Oregon State has Colorado on the road, Stanford at home, which new coaching staff. We'll see what happens. They don't scare me. And then Oregon State finishes with the Huskies at home and Oregon on the road.
Yeah, I think those are 2 of their 3 toughest games. Washington and Oregon are both going to be really tough. They have 2 of the top 5 quarterbacks in Penix and Nix. I think either one of those games, I think right now they're 50-50. I think either team could pull out a victory. And for all 3 of these teams, really, these games could be defining a spot in the Pac-12 championship. I mean, which is really quite crazy to say.
Do you like the fact that they're at the end of the season for Oregon State, back to back?
I do. I personally do, just because I feel like teams are usually playing their best football at the end of the year, and I think it gives the Oregon State secondary time to really come together, or really just the defense as a whole. I mean, with losses, it gives them time to gel. It gain experience for their probably the 2 best offenses they'll face all season.
So playing sports, you've played sports, that emotional, like that. You know they're going to be up for both those games. Is that hard to keep that level of emotion for the whole 2 weeks, or do you think that's something that they'll just feed on going into those 2 games?
I think sometimes it can be a little difficult, but I think due to the fact that they'll be playing Oregon right after Washington, I don't think they'll have any trouble keeping their emotion any higher than their emotion any lower than it needs to be. I think they'll be ready to go.
Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break for our sponsors to we'll stay with you live, but have a little break here, and then we're going to come back. We're going to talk Pac-12 title game, early thoughts, and then mailbag. We have a lot of great mailbag. If you're watching live and have a question for us, pop it in the comments, and we will make sure to try to answer that as well. Okay, we are back. Jake, you ready to talk Pac-12 title? I know it's so early.
Yeah, I'm ready.
But I think we need to talk about it because I made my vote. I vote in the media poll, the Pac-12 media poll, and I put my vote, my top 6 teams in the lodge. And I think top 6 was the toughest when you actually to get in there. So do you want to give me who you have playing in the Pac-12 title game? Or do you want to go through? Tell me who you have playing in it.
Sure. I have USC. I just think that offense is going to be the best in the country, arguably. explosive team, firepower at all skill spots. Their big question will be whether or not that defense can improve. It'll be interesting to see how that progresses throughout the season. And then the second spot, for me, it came down to 3 teams, Utah, Oregon State, and Washington. And it was tough for me, but I ended up going with Utah just to the fact that I think with Cam Rising, they're a more certainty at the quarterback spot, whereas with the Oregon State program, with DJ, who knows if he can perform to his five-star billing. But I do think if he can perform at a high level, I think Oregon State could be right up there.
You know what? Okay, so I'll give you my 2 teams. I have USC as well because I just think they're the cream of the crop right now for the Pac-12. They've turned that corner. They've recruited at a high level. They have gone to the portal at a very high level. Mm-hmm. I think they're well coached, which has kind of been a struggle that they've had the past several years before Lincoln Riley came in. So I just think I see them as at the top of the conference. Like you, I had 3 teams there right battling. I had Utah, Oregon State, and Washington. I think there's an argument to be made that Washington is there. Utah, I still have a couple question marks with Utah, whether they should be there or not in that top billing. But I went, and I'm not trying to sound like a homer because you guys know that I'm pretty non-orange colored glasses, but I went Oregon State playing in the title game. Now, a lot of things have to go well for Oregon State, but I think last year they were so close. If they had better quarterback play, they would have been there. So
they would have been there.
But then there's some questions with DBs. I think at the end of the day, I love Oregon State's offensive line. I think the defensive line has taken huge strides forward, and I think that's going to be the catalyst. You know, I think it's going to be a big tiebreaker year where it's going to be who beat who. So I think Oregon State's going to come in there maybe with a couple tiebreakers, but I think if they have beaten Washington down the stretch, I think Oregon State gets the nod. That's where I'm at right now. And I know we have some questions about season, but I haven't been this excited for an Oregon State season since, what was the Alamo Bowl year? Was that 2012?
2012 was that season.
So there's a lot of quiet buzz right now in Corvallis. Nobody's talking too much about big things, but there's a quiet confidence down there. And I'm excited. Like I said, a lot of things have to go right. Injuries have to stay injury free, and you have to have the ball bounce your way a few times. But I think this could be a really, really special year for the Beavs.
Yeah, I agree.
There, I said it out loud. And there's going to be people think I jinx them, but okay. We are going mailbag, and we have some good ones, and it's going to be all over the board, Jake. I know you took a peek at it. I'm just pulling it up here. Let's talk a little bit about this because there's some, like I said, there's some good ones. I've looked through them all, but I'm kind of just going to grab some as I go here. First one, 87J Round asks if there are any commitments expected in the next few days. What are the positions in need? And then update on injuries. Injuries, we're going to wait until we have time to talk with Coach Smith and the staff. That usually happens here a day or two before fall camp starts. So we will have a full injury report then when Coach Smith meets the media. Don't want to speculate right now because the guys have just been working out on their own. But commitments expected. There is one coming in the next, I would say, week. Give it a week. Yeah. You have any more?
I believe there are a few. I have 3, I believe, are going to be coming in the next couple weeks. Okay. There are 3 silents that I know of. Just not sure when they're all going to announce.
Okay, this is a good point, too, because I know we're going to get this question. People are going to be like, why? What's the thing about silent commits? Mm-hmm. Guys commit to the program. They want time to tell other coaches. They want time to, let other, the coaches that were recruiting them know. But a lot of these young men have special days that they just want it to happen on, whether it's the 4th of July or grandpa's birthday or their birthday.
Anniversary. Yep.
Yes. So you just let them do it. And we always honor that at Beaver Blitz. So there's that. I know that question comes up all the time, Jake. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you hear it's going to happen on a certain day, and I'll put a little teaser out, and then the kid changes his mind, not changes his mind about Oregon State, but he changes his mind about what day he's going to do it. So I'm left with a story ready to go. Jake and I are in communication, can you post this? I'm out of town, so it works out. Go Beavs 2 asks, will Hatton, Reddix, and Card all be available come August?
Yeah.
Kind of injury related.
Yeah. I would expect Card for sure. I'm not too certain about Hatton and Reddix. I'm assuming we'll find out more in the next few weeks.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to switch gears a little bit. Baseball question from Reese or Beef. He has a couple here, but let's just see here. What does OSU need to add, if anything, to have a legit chance at Omaha next year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I already think they have a legitimate chance. I mean, the MLB draft went about as best as it could go for Oregon State. Trent Caraway, he's going to be a stud. Like, for people that don't really follow baseball recruiting or like the MLB draft, the amount of hype that Gavin Turley had last year coming into his freshman year, Caraway is that same kind of prospect. He's a guy that could have been a first-round draft pick easily, and it's absolutely huge. I think he'll be a day-one starter at either third base or shortstop. That was a huge win. Brady Casper's back, I'm assuming, with Micah McDowell. None of them were drafted, so that gives Oregon State their whole outfield back from a season ago to go with Travis Bazana and Gavin Turley. I think the one thing that could be added is a starting pitcher. Really question marks about that. They haven't really had a dominant guy since Jerpy left. Granted, that was only 2 seasons ago. I do think the staff will be improved. A lot of their guys that were contributors were freshmen, so I think a year for guys like Nelson Keljo could pay huge dividends this upcoming spring.
Absolutely. I think this we talked about this before the season, just how young this team was. I even questioned whether they would make the regional. And not only did they make regional,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had to go against
the LSU.
Yeah. I mean, they had to play LSU, which had the top 2 draft picks. So, and won in the College World Series. Okay, go ahead.
I know it's a little early. I mean, it's just July, but I think if this team gets a few of the transfers they're pursuing, I know it may sound kind of crazy based off the 2022 team's success, but I think this team could be Coach Canham's best.
Okay.
I really do.
You're getting bold, kind of like me.
Yep.
It's a bold one today. Maybe I'll change the name of the pod. Okay, Reese or Beav has a couple other questions. Who will be the surprise breakout star for OSU this fall?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys. I've actually got 2 articles coming out tomorrow and Thursday are the 5 breakout candidates on offense and defense. So that kind of will give a host of names. But a defensive guy I really like is Takari Hickle. And then I think a guy who's going to have a huge season, I think he'll be an all-conference guy, is Easton Mascarenas. I think he's going to have a massive season.
I 1,000% agree with that one. I thought it was going to be last year, but I think we saw Kyrie Fisher kind of maybe do a little better than we thought he might. I'm going to go with Card. That's going to be my freshman breakout because I just
Card
think
too.
He's got some stuff to his game.
Some game-breaking speed.
Yes. Okay. Bucket list vacation spot. Oh, we're going all over the place today.
Oof.
We're going to Hawaii here pretty soon.
Mine's got to be the Maldives.
Me too.
That's got to be the top one. I mean, I'm like more of a beach, laid back vacation kind of person, and that's at the top of the list for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I grew up surfing in Oregon, so I daydreamed and doodled palm trees and waves on all my books, and like Hawaii, and I did just get back from Europe, and Reese or Beef wanted to know. I loved Majorca, so that's an island in the Mediterranean. It's a Spanish island, so that was a blast. I loved everything about that. But Bali and the Maldives are both high on my list. There's a little island in Fiji called Tavarua, and I always wanted to go to Tavarua to surf break there. Chopu in Tahiti would be one. I don't know. There's a lot of places. But my bucket list is kind of all out in the Pacific and Indian Ocean, Reunion Islands, Canary Islands, you name it. But I'm a beach girl too. And then another kind of fun one from Reese or Beef, and then we'll move on, is what coach from our past would have benefited the most by a completed stadium?
That's a tough one. I mean, I haven't been around for a whole lot of coaches. I've only had 4 in my lifetime, or 3, I guess. I wasn't alive for Coach Erickson.
You missed out on a gem.
Yeah, I know. I missed out on a good season. I'm going to go I honestly don't even know. I'm just gonna say Riley just because I feel like he did a good job doing a lot with talent that wasn't necessarily the best. So I think with a better stadium could lead to better players looking at Corvallis and better things happening.
Yeah, I think I mean, God, I go back. So I was a student during Pettibone, and I don't think Coach Bone was that bad of a coach. I think he could have benefited greatly from just a little more athletic and university
Support
resources.
that kind of thing.
It came after him with Paul Risser, and that's where the turnaround really started with Riley 1, and then Dennis, and then Riley 2. So I'm going to go with Pettibone. Pettibone, he had to deal with the old berm and the no indoor facility, and like he had some good players too. When you look back at some of the players that Coach Pettibone had, Tim Alexander, Reggie Tung, Ezra Tualo. I'm dating myself now, but those were all, even though we had crappy seasons, those guys were really, really good. So that's where I'm going there. Okay. We are moving on. Reeser Beef, thank you so much for some good questions. O-State 30, Pac-12 trending team. Who do you see going up the most and down the most based off where they finished the Pac-12 last year?
My trending team up is definitely Arizona. I mean, their offense, I said this, they're explosive, one of the best in the conference. Their defense is a little questionable, not very experienced, depth issues. But I think if they score enough points, they could win 8 games this year. And then on the downhill, I really don't see a lot of teams regressing too much. Cal's kind of one that comes to mind. Don't remember exactly what their record was last year, but I just don't think they're going to be that good. Quarterback play is a question mark. None of their guys are really experienced. But Sam Jackson and Ben Finley. It's just a real question mark is Cal.
I have to. I mean, those are both. I do think Arizona. I actually have Oregon regressing a little bit.
I think their defense and the offensive line is going to be worse than last year.
Yeah, and my thing with Oregon is, and I didn't have them in my top 4. I think I have them then at 5. My thing with Oregon is I think they're getting a ton of talent, but I'm not sold on
Lanning
and what kind of coaching and culture that he's building there. So I think that can go so far, and we're seeing so many transfers in and out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm anxious to see what he can do coaching and culture-wise.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been the trend of their coaches ever since Chip left, with Taggart, Cristobal, and then just coaches that can really just recruit the brakes off, but we haven't really necessarily seen Lanning develop his guys. Now, if they do develop him, I think Oregon's roster is talented enough where they could make a push for the Pac-12 championship easily. I still think they'll be worst case 7-5, 8-4.
Yeah.
I think it'll be.
But to Duck fans, that's bad.
Yeah, true.
Nick Volker agrees with you. Oregon down the most. Lanning ain't the guy. Arizona up the most. The wheels were spinning up last year. I do think Arizona is kind of
program
good.
On the rise. Yeah.
O-State 30 also asks one offense and one defense. Who is a transfer JC kid that will make the biggest impact? Sees the field or plays the most?
Yeah. Defense, I'm going Tyrese Ivy. He's a bigger corner, 6'3". Kind of physicality-wise reminds me of a Richard Sherman type player, just long, lanky, physical. I think he's going to be a starter for sure. And then offense, it's kind of hard to go anywhere other than DJ just because of the name, the brand, and just what a player of his caliber really means to this Oregon State program.
I agree. I mean, and Tyrese Ivy, what we saw from him during spring ball, I mean, he had just arrived. Good. Sometimes DBs take a while, a year or two, but he really flashed early, Okay, Dad of Two Beeves has a couple here. Who will we get to replace Forrester in baseball?
Yeah, in my mind, there's really 2 guys that kind of step up as the first to come to mind. The first one is if Oregon State gets the guys they're going after in the transfer portal, that could allow Mason Guerra to shift over to first from a third and left field spot. And I think if that does happen and Oregon State gets the guys they get, then this offense is going to be deadly 1 through 9. And then if not, I think they're in good hands with their other guy, which is Jacob Craig, who he had a really good year. Hit 333 with the homer, 11 RBI. Was a little banged up, so didn't play as much as the staff wanted him to. But I think even if Guerra stays at third base or left field, I think Craig's a guy that can really help contribute for sure.
I actually agree with you there. Who will be the top receiver this year? We'll kind of go some quick hitters right now.
I'm going to go with Silas. I think Silas Bolden's in for a monster year.
Okay. How much longer can we keep Coach Smith and his staff together?
I don't see Coach Smith really leaving anytime soon. The one college job I thought he would maybe consider leaving for is USC, but I don't see that opening anytime soon. And it already was open, and he stayed at Oregon State. The NFL could come calling. I don't know whether he would go if that would happen, but I think Coach Smith is in it for the long haul. Trent Bray too, I think, is also a guy that's going to stay in Corvallis. I don't think he has any aspirations at the moment to be a head coach anytime soon. I feel like he wants to kind of enjoy his time in Corvallis and maybe build for a job down the road, kind of like what Brent Venables did under Dabo Sweeney, almost just stay and find the right job.
And my key is keeping Coach Mahalichek.
Coach M. Yep, that's another one too.
So those I think you keep those three. Some of the other position coaches you're going to see kind of come and go as what happens when you get some of those young guys. But I think keeping Bray at least for a few more years. Lindgren doesn't. I think Lindgren's here too, but that one doesn't worry me as much just because you have Coach Smith at the helm at head coach. So I think he'd be able to find someone should Lindgren want to move. Okay, here's one for you because I don't know this because it's been so long. And so you have to name the spot, and then maybe we go there to do our work one day after fall camp. Who makes the best taco in Corvallis?
Ooh, my favorite taco spot in Corvallis is Taco Vino.
I have been there.
Yeah, it's super good.
Okay.
I don't remember what street they're on, but it's pretty good tacos.
Okay. True. Maybe you've heard of this, Jake. I haven't. True or false? Elwood Beaver says true or false. Rumors are that there will be an open house tour of the new set of Reeser on August 19th. If so, will this be open to the public or just media and VIPs?
Yeah, I mean, that's the first I've really heard of that. I wouldn't be opposed to it, so I hope it's true just because
I'm actually thinking, you know what I'm thinking?
Check it out. That might be the open scrimmage.
It might be an open scrimmage, but I'm guessing it could be for the 50-yard line dinner. That would be more for the big boosters. We'll keep you posted, though. Yeah. We will put our feelers out on that one. Cal 25, couple questions for you here. A couple we've already answered, but if you're picking expansion schools for Pac-12, who are you picking?
I think San Diego State's probably the most likely, and then 3 other programs really come to mind. The one I really want is Boise State. Don't really know how likely that is. Yeah, I mean, I just really like that program. I feel like it's a good football program, great basketball program, and they could really help out the conference compete at a national level. But then the more likely to go with the San Diego State would be Southern Methodist. I think that SMU is probably really likely just to dive and get that Texas TV market. And then UNLV is the other one, which is kind of one that I would like just because I feel like it'd be cool to travel to Vegas and cover sports games.
You can take my spot in Vegas because Vegas is too expensive. I did have fun though for the Vegas Bowl. That was fun. Who is okay? So we've kind of the breakout player of the year. You have one overall, not receiver, not just overall. Who's gonna go with DJ?
Silas Bolden.
Cybo. Okay.
Yeah, I'm on with Silas. Silas had a really good spring camp. He really came on strong at the end of last season. I feel like the Florida game was kind of a sneak peek at what he can do in a full-time role. And with a quarterback that can really push the ball downfield, I feel like the speed of Silas could make a big difference.
Okay. What in Blue Hell OSU asked, would like your take on the QB position so far this cycle? I'm guessing recruiting.
Yeah.
We kind of touched on that a little bit in that Oregon State has gone after some pretty big names.
DeMarcus, EJ.
Yeah. What's your take? Are they striking out, or do you think they still have a shot? Like, okay, let's just play pretend here. let's say Oregon State goes 11-1.
Yeah,
Does that open the door?
I think it does. Specifically, I feel like the guy you got to keep an eye on is Kamenog, just due to the fact that I really don't know how much longer Justin Wilcox will be at Cal. I feel like this very well could be his last season if they don't make a bowl game. And I feel like if Oregon State does have that great season, they show success in the passing game, Kamenog could be pushed to come to Oregon State, redshirt, sit behind Childs, learn. I feel like he could have I feel like he could be a guy to still keep an eye on.
Did that one surprise you at all? That he committed to Cal?
It did. I know he's got a lot of family there. It was just, which makes sense from like a mental standpoint, but from like a football standpoint, it was a little interesting to me. I know their new offensive coordinator, Jake Spavito, likes to throw the ball around, whereas Oregon State doesn't as much. So that was kind of maybe a factor for him. But for someone that if someone wants to compete for a Pac-12 championship, I just don't see Cal doing that anytime in the next 2 to 3 seasons.
Yeah, that one surprised me a little bit, just because, go from Washington to checking Oregon State, then to Cal. Anyway, okay, Mr. G. Gray, our resident favorite USC Trojan fan, who's also a Weaver fan. This one. Okay, I'm anxious to see what you say, because I had when I read it in I said out loud. I said my answer out loud. I was like laughing. I'm like, this is like a no-brainer. You might have a different thought than me. Which former Beaver would you rather have on the 2023 roster right now? Isaiah Hodgins or Stephen Paia?
I'm going with Isaiah Hodgins.
See, I said Paia.
Really?
Isaiah Hodgins, in my opinion, was a good receiver on a crappy team, but he wasn't great. Stephen Paia was a great D tackle that would
for me,
really help.
It just comes down that I think Paia is a better player, and I just think with Oregon State's defensive line room compared to their receiver room, I feel like Hodgins would help this team. I feel like Oregon State's got guys on the defensive line, whereas the receiver outside of Anthony Gould and Silas, it's kind of questionable. Where if they had that third receiver of like Isaiah Hodgins caliber, I feel like him with DJ could be special.
Yeah, nothing against Isaiah, but if I was going to be picking receivers, former Beavers, it would be
Cooks.
It would be Cooks or Strotter or James Rogers
Marcus
or Wheaton or Haas. I could name 57 before I named Hodge. I mean, like I said, and part of that's probably not fair to Isaiah, because he did play on some, like I said, pretty crappy teams. But I think Stephen Paia would be a huge difference maker, like huge, and maybe free up some guys in the pass rush. I don't know. That is me. Always stick with the line. I always stick with the lines. And I think, I don't know, I would love to hear Mr. G. Gray's thought on this, because he was a D lineman. So
I feel like he would say Paia. Yeah.
I think he's going to agree with me. So
I feel like most people would agree with you too.
Jermaine, you gotta weigh in and let me know what you're thinking, because I think that is no brainer. You always go with an O-line or D line. That's my thought. Okay. Here for the Bees. Okay, Jake, this is it's a comment for you and a question for me. I hope he can remain humble. How did young Jake hit the ground running so well? I don't know, but how about young Angie's ability to find these like rock stars? I mean, come on, guys. We've got Jake, we've got Carter, we've had Amy, Marcus.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you have hit the ground running, and I am so appreciative. You guys don't even know behind the scenes. He's already helping put up his own articles, and he's given me ideas. It's like just taking off where Carter left off, and it's amazing. And you guys, seriously, he knows the roster so well, and that's such a blessing. So stay humble. And then this question was, Angie, you've been close to the program for a while, from a student to fundraiser to running the Blitz business. Are you able to see reality without orange colored glasses most of us have on, to give us insight to where this team is at and where they are destined to end up? Okay. I think I've kind of alluded to this season, and these kind of seasons are tough because, like I said, a lot of things have to fall in place for a program like Oregon State that maybe doesn't have a roster full of 5-star talent deep. But what I can tell you, yes, I might only be 25, but I have 25 years around Oregon State football. Okay, kind of kidding. I'm not 25, obviously. I've been around a long time. And so what I'm seeing right now is probably the Beaver football team in the best space that I've seen it in a long time. As far as, and I say that based on culture, because I have not seen a team this cohesive and this together. When I look at the roster moves and transfer, I mean, Oregon State's sitting above where they need to be. I mean, they're going to have to cut some spots here, and nobody's leaving. So that tells you a
really stands
ton. There is very quiet confidence when you talk to people around the Valley Center. There's a hunger that these guys have that they want to take it the next step. I think that 10-win season last year was kind of just that taste, and then beating Florida the way they did is, why not us? And it's, I'm excited. And I have not, like I said, I have done Beaver Blitz now for 17 years. I was a fundraiser for 6, and this might be the most excited I've been. And to be completely honest, 2000 kind of was a surprise, kind of sprung on everybody, but it was the similar kind of quiet confidence that was kind of talked about. I'm excited, and I'm not saying it's an undefeated season, but I think this team is going to give Oregon State fans a lot to be excited about. Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, personally for me, this is the most anticipated season of my lifetime. Obviously, you don't want any 2001s where you come out highly ranked and you just fall flat on your face. So you just got to keep that. I just think it'll be really interesting to see how this team attacks their first couple games.
Yeah, I agree. And not play down to their level of opponent. Yeah. And not that those opponents are bad, but we've seen Oregon State teams in the past kind of play down and struggle. I'm going to kind of cruise through a couple of these. Here, Stuart 1039 said, heard a couple of times on the radio, and he's referring to 1080 Joe radio, some rumblings over the past couple of weeks to the effect of, don't be surprised if Aiden Childs ends up being the starter this year.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see it this year. I would love to see it. I mean, I think he might be the most talented quarterback they've got, but I feel like it'll just be really hard for him to overcome a quarterback of DJ's caliber, especially if it clicks for him.
Yeah.
I definitely think he will see time.
Veteran status. Yeah, I think we see him. And if you're a Beaver fan,
4 games for sure.
Yeah, and if you're a Beaver
I'm hoping
fan,
he redshirts.
You are so excited for the future that he brings. But I think what DJ brings as far as just game management, knowledge, experience, it's going to be hard to beat out.
I personally really think fans are going to want to stick around for the second half of that UC Davis game, because I think they're probably going to get a long look at the future.
Like I said, there's some fun. Like I said, and believe me, if Aiden Childs is the guy and gives the Beavers the best shot to win, then let's see it. But I do think it'd be hard pressed to beat out a guy like DJ because he has so much experience and size. I mean, honestly,
he's a big guy.
He's a big dude. Okay, last question. Actually, I have one on here. Well, Uncle Filthy says everyone's sleeping on Gould because you've been picking Silas. But
I've been picking Silas a lot.
Alex Sassani asked, how can Oregon State beat Oregon this season?
Run the ball.
Run the ball.
Yeah, literally. I do think Oregon's defense and their offensive line will be weaker than last year. I think they lost all their offensive line starters. So I think whereas in years past, Oregon State's defense hasn't been able to stop Oregon as much, I think this year they're going to have an easier time. It will be tough to go down and beat them in Autzen. They haven't won there in 15 years now. But I feel like if they run the ball, don't get nervous, and just play football like they play football, I think this Oregon State team has a great chance to beat them.
Okay. Totally. Matt Giafoni has one for you. It's a good one for you. If they were to run for president, which of these coaches would at least win the coveted Corvallis vote? Smith, Bray, Ruick, Canham, or Tinkle?
I feel like you got to go with Smith. I mean, Scott Ruick's really done a lot. He's taken the program to the Final Four, but he's kind of the golden boy of Oregon State football. I mean, he
Yeah, but can
took them to the
Smith
Fiesta Bowl.
politic? I can't see Smith out there shaking
I
hands
guess
and
you have
kissing
that
babies.
aspect of it. Yeah, I feel like, yeah, I could see Ruick doing that.
Yeah.
I feel like Ruick's more of a presidential figure, whereas Smith's more of you go out there and get stuff done.
Okay. So who's going to win the vote? Ruick?
I just feel like Smith
Or you
will
think,
just
or you
because
think
of all
Smith,
he's
he's just the
done.
golden boy?
I feel like he's just the golden boy of Oregon State football.
Maybe Smith with Ruick as his VP.
VP, yeah.
I don't know. Okay,
I like that.
guys, we have hit the hour mark, and I don't want to keep anybody any longer, but this was fun. We are going to be back in 2 weeks, and that's when we start our weekly feature. If you missed the beginning, we will be up on Spotify and all of your spots for podcasts, hopefully by next time. 24/7's guy that's kind of in charge of it is on paternity leave right now. He sent me all the stuff to do it, but I don't have the access on the back end. So maybe we'll get this one up. I'm not positive, but I promise I'll have a new intro, and I will have with Jake, featuring Jake, since Carter's, over on the main 24/7 site now. And stick with Beaver Blitz because Jake, we have a ton. Do you want to preview some of what you have coming in the couple weeks ahead?
Just off the top of my head, I've got 5 breakout candidates on offense and defense coming tomorrow and Thursday. I've got position groups coming either Friday or this weekend. Depends on how fast I'm able to get that done. And then I've got position group deep dives where I kind of break down every position. And then opponent previews will start to roll out as soon as all the other beat writers respond to our text. We're about halfway done, so those will start to get rolling out here in the next week or two, probably.
Lots of excitement. And Jake and I'll be back in 2 weeks to kind of just sit down and deep dive into the position groups and the personnel before we kind of on the eve of fall camp. And then stick with us because fall camp coverage ramps up crazy amounts. Videos, video breakdowns, practice reports, special features on athletes. It's all going to be there. If you're not a member of Blitz, you definitely want to join now. And I do expect a commitment in the next week, at least one. And Jake says he knows of 3. So time to get that membership to Blitz to get in the lodge. And we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode of the Damn Podcast.